nowadays, if I don't have at least 1 gig or something, then I have withdrawals into or something. And we had a newsletter, inspired by message of the day that you get. We had message of the month. I was looking for my copies, but it turned out that one day my wife went through a big brown box and said, "What's all this? This is ancient stuff." It went on the curb. I was out of town. I said, "Where is it all?" It's gone. So thanks for holding on to it. And I noticed that the speaker at that time was a chap from Unicom. I still am in touch with him. He's now in Austin, Texas. And
who was that?
Anurag, he talked about the format of CDs. Remember, this is 1990.
Yep.
A CD, what was the file system on the CD and all? Today we take it for granted. You have Blu-ray 50 gig, but in those days it was a lot. He's nowadays in Austin, and I think he works on contract for Dell. So I keep in touch with a lot of the folks. And I see here a little article on the, computer glossary. So I'll share this around with you. But it was a lot of fun in those days. So we had, like this, but our dinner meetings were, the dinner went on with the technical topic. And the very first one that was on FSCK, if I remember correctly, Mike Wayne, he suggested the topic, and we had a whole bunch of other people. Sheldon Hamburger was there. He used to run a healthcare management software company on a whole bunch of SCO, Unix, OS out there. So they said, okay, so we talked about FSCK. Now, in those days, whenever things started up, it had to go through a file system check. And it had to know intimately how the file system was organized so that it could go through all those links and match up every data block and so on. And it did a lot of things. Fortunately, fortunately, disk drives in those days were maybe 100 megabyte or 150 megabyte.
40 megabytes.
But as disk drives got bigger and bigger, FSCK started taking longer and longer, and there have been multiple rewrites of file systems since then. And these days, they still do it, but now we have log structured file system. So they only check what changed from last time. So it was interesting. Lots of other topics. UUCP, Unix to Unix copy. We actually had a technical presentation on how to use VI, the text editor.
Cool.
And there were lots of things. And then we had a few vendors, as I recall. They would come and talk about, how great their hardware was. Everyone had, the best hardware on the planet. And it was okay. We kind of, looked forward to it just as a change. But it also made a lot of fun because we didn't mind poking, waiting until they said something that we knew, aha, here we go. And we run up here.
Like TI.
Did I say, remember ripping up the TI guy?
Yeah, well, see, you guys remember, so talk to them about it. But they weren't all bad. I remember one that we had a huge full house. It was more like 100 people. We had people standing in the back. And if I remember correctly, that was Silicon Graphics.
They always brought
And they brought this giant workstation, and it had this absolutely fantastic display. The team that did that graphics for that company, they're all at NVIDIA these days. Still a lot of folks, I keep in touch with, so they're doing the same graphics. And it was amazing. We had all sorts of, funny animations and demos. Today we take it for granted. The kids play on it, and but in those days for us it was a big deal that this worked. So that was perhaps one of the most enjoyable ones. I remember one demo where they actually took like some sort of water droplet and it fell on some sheet of some foam material, and you could see the foam material going up and down. And then somebody said, "What good is that?" Then I think one of us in the audience said, I think you could sell that to all the mattress manufacturers. So it was fun. And then, a little typo there, but in '88, this was a couple years later, we actually came up with the bright idea, let's have a real conference. And then Expo at Detroit was born, and we did it, I think, in Southfield one year. And then, hey, there you go, hold that up, there you go. That's a real
from 1990, this is one of the brochures from 90, so.
Where was that conference at?
I think one we did at Kobo also. Or
this
something.
one was at the Ritz-Carlton.
Yeah, Ritz-Carlton, Dearborn,
I think
yeah.
they
It's
have
like we
a
did
couple
two in
halls too,
Southfield,
I
one in
think.
Ritz and one in Cobo.
And one at Como, and that was the death of it, the one at
Yeah,
Como.
the Cobo
Yeah.
one is where
Just
we all
about
got
a couple
killed,
of
yeah.
guys, yeah.
But you know, there was a lot of enthusiasm those days. It was amazing to see, you know, people by word of mouth, they would all come up and show up, and every month we met a lot of new people.
Yeah.
Soon as they say, oh, you got a Unix user group, great. So where do I sign up? And they'd all show up here. It was really great. Of course, you know, if you we didn't have a whole lot of women there. There was only one, as I remember, Linda, who
Linda
also
Mason,
worked for.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, see, you remember the
What
last
about
name.
Connie C?
So we were kind of like,
Yeah, Connie, she showed up.
we were like, you know, maybe somebody attended
later,
it
though.
and got inspired and became a writer for Big Bang Theory. I wouldn't be surprised, but it was quite the thing. But here's a networking joke that maybe you find hard with V6, but if you remember, we used to have node names and we used to put a little exclamation mark, so something like Michigan Bell, exclamation mark, somebody. And it was pronounced as Bang, you know, I was MCF Bang, SHAN, you were, you know, or Ron Wilson was TARDIS, Bang something. And then Sheldon got the bright idea, let's name our node Gang. And of course, the rest is,
Yeah.
she got very famous for that, very famous. But we had a lot of very interesting speakers at one of our conferences. We got
right.
David Korn, who wrote the Korn Shell. He came and actually taught a tutorial. We got Peter Honeyman. I actually run into him once in a while. Yeah, I go to the supercomputing conference, and he's always there because nowadays he's into large distributed file systems.
But he's in Ann Arbor, isn't he?
That's right, yeah, so he's doing all that research work there, but it's very practical on parallel NFS. So the RFCs, everything have been approved and out. There are people doing client implementations, and he's pretty much in the thick of it. So he's very active in that field. Yeah. And in those days, you know, getting hold of source code was always, you know, a big deal. So we all ran these little archives that you could send email to, and the response back from the email were little snippets of source code. You could assemble it together, compile it, and you have your utility. You don't have it, let's send it out there. And Richard Salz at UUNet, he maintained, and a lot of people volunteered this. This is the best thing. It was all volunteer. So there was, I don't know, a joy in doing it, or some sort of community spirit, and that was the stuff that, you know, I look forward to. So he would have these news group things, and they would have all sorts of utilities and things that you could get. I actually ran one of those out there, and we had a large disk drive that was left behind from a project, so what do? I put the entire source code of whatever was released up to like volume 19. And every 6 months when they had a certain list, it's okay, volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, you get all the revised UCP utilities there, different versions of VI, all sorts of stuff. And it was all there. It was kind of fun to do all of that stuff. And the other thing is we also almost knew by heart all the Michigan node names. That means these are Unix sites all scattered. Who are they? What's the contact person? TARDIS, that was Ron Wilson. Bill Alley, if he's still around.
He shows up sometimes. I don't
Yeah.
see
He was
him
here a
today.
few months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was also very enthusiastic about it. And FMS was Ford Motor Scientific Research Lab, machine number 7. And that was, we all volunteered our machines. Remember, there was no internet, so we would dial up, transfer all the packets. It was a store and forward thing, very much that we still see today. But we did it with telephones. And in those days, we didn't have flat rate or anything. We
Can I
paid
have your
by the
attention,
minute.
please? The time is 8:30. The library will be closing in 30 minutes at 9 o'clock.
We still have time.
Please be
So,
advised that all public computers will shut down approximately 10 minutes before closing. Thank you.
okay. And so we'd know all the node names, and the fun part was we'd always try to figure out how could we get this routed here and there. It was a fun thing. I picked a few node names. Some of them are actually quite obvious. For example, the second one at the bottom there, EDS, EWS. believe it or not, in the entire organization known as EDS in those days, now owned by HP, the engineering workstation, there was only one, and it was connected to the UUCP-Net for Michigan, and that forwarded the entire traffic for EDS, whoever wanted to talk to it. So it was like that. And there was a couple of dual ones, and there was one actually host, he found out that, hey, the machine named Node, NOD, is not taken. And we always used to say, darn, I wish I'd thought of that. All the good stuff was taken very early by early adopters. Then we used to have, or things like MIBT, which was Michigan Bell Telephone. And Jim Johnson, I think his name was, he would connect anyone, and he said, don't worry, I'll phone you. I'm the telephone company. I don't have to pay the bills. So we literally lived off of, you know, whatever largesse he would, you know, hand out. Yeah. So, you know, we said, oh, we got good connectivity. Why? Because Michigan Bell, yeah. They would call us, yeah. And if they do it every hourly or on demand, whatever it was, and if for a couple of days no call came, we say, must be something wrong. Hey, call up Jim, can you reset your modem or something? So no, the problem's at your end. So that's how we did a lot of debugging. Oh, actually here is an entry. These entries would be distributed at the beginning of every month as compressed archives, and that's the one from TARDIS. For those of you who've been around or if you've been to computer museums, AT&T actually made PCs. That was a 3B1. It ran a real Unix System 5 Release 3. And Rob Wilson and Jeff White, that's another, he's there. So that was the name. You had to put a telephone number, even coordinates, because there was software, believe it or not, called Path Alias, written by Peter Honeyman, that used all of this information to figure out which is the cheapest way or fastest way to send email. And then there's some of the other machines in Michigan, SDI, MIBT, GANG, and RLW was Ron Wilson's email. And at the bottom, it would actually say which of the nodes it would connect to and what's the frequency. So it spoke to Ford Motor only in the evening, Dundee every hour, and daily start to means twice a day, so every 12 hours. And weekly, that means, yeah, once a week it would connect, otherwise not. And then there's another field out there, demand. That means as soon as a message came in, it would dial out immediately or do it. So that was always kind of fun stuff. So those are just some of the quick thingies that I wanted to share. And if you have any questions or any tidbits, I'd be happy to, you know,
Well,
memory's still pretty good at this stage.
some of it, yeah. If we can get a show of hands, how many people have been here more than 5 years coming to this group? That's pretty good.
Good.
How about more than 10 years?
Not bad.
It went down a bit. Yeah. More than 15 years.
Okay, Dwayne out there.
Yeah, it's going down a little bit. More than 20 years.
Your hands up?
Yeah.
My hands up.
Yeah.
Because the group is like
Yeah, yeah,
approaching 27 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Dick Williams, who's normally here, he came in just I think a few months after I did.
Yeah, it was like probably 80,
Might have been about
88,
yeah.
or so.
Yeah.
Jim Bluting came a month or two
87.
after I did.
You're right behind you.
Yeah.
I've been on the board since 1990, and Dick Williams was on the board till last year, since 1990.
He was on that.
It shows in that MOTM that went around. That was,
Oh, yeah.
It
Message
showed-
of the month, yeah.
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 Boy, that was a production too, you know. We
Well,
used,
that was the only communication, right? There was
yeah,
no email, so that's
yeah,
how.
no, so we actually physically mailed it out, and we would compose it using a very popular Unix tool called TROF.
Yeah, most of the time.
Or,
Yeah.
and well, N stood for new runoff.
Yeah.
The System 5 was called ROF, runoff, because you run off a copy to the phototype setter. And boy, did I remember all those little dot DL, delimited list, dot this, dot that. And then when HTML came out, I said, hey, it's pretty much the same thing. Now you just got angle brackets.
Yeah.
And nothing's changed. And today they've got XML that'll describe that for you, and probably there'll be
So
something.
Airsoft is more like
Things-
a LaTeX or something.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what we're.
And we've over the years, 27 years, we've had some awesome presentations. Things like HTML and you mentioned the Silicon Graphics guys. That's what I remember them bringing their big hardware.
Oh, yeah.
Their workstation was about this wide and set on the ground about that tall, and then bring and show us their
The
dog
monitor
phone.
was
Yeah, the
huge.
monitor was
It
huge.
like, in those days, we're talking 32-inch CRT.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
CRT.
Holy
they
So
had
it was
one
like
of
110
these,
pounds.
I remember that they brought it in like a little truck, and they had like, what do you call those cards, you know, the big cards that you see rolled? Yeah, big dolly, yeah. Yeah, they had
They'd
it all
show,
coming in on that.
They'd run, everybody wanted to see their flight simulator,
Oh, yes.
dog fight.
Dog fighting,
Something like
yes.
that.
And if I remember correctly, we had to decide on the venue well in advance, because they told us that the power draw was so-and-so, and then when we called the restaurants, they said we don't have any
Yeah.
outlets, so we changed and we got a different place.
Yeah.
So, you know, those were the days. Yes. Good thing we didn't start off as a mainframe user group.
Yeah.
Now we got all these tablets.
I don't
You can
think
have
we-
it-
I don't think
we
we-
have it in corner
We're,
of.
Well, it's kind of interesting, because we're all running Unix on our phones.
Yeah.
I mean, iOS is basically a BSD, right?
Yeah.
And Android is Linux, and,
Yep, yep.
you know, unless you're running Windows Phone, you pretty much, or BlackBerry,
Oh,
you're pretty much running a variant
I
of Unix.
loved all of that stuff, and you know, I'm still, the day they have, you know, toasters that can connect with the wireless Ethernet address, then I'll be, you know,
Oh, you got your
Yeah.
your Tux credit card?
yeah.
Hey, thanks.
I have to change it. We're gonna use that later.
Anybody else have anything they want to share about the history of Mud? Questions or comments or anything?
Any question at all?
Back then, we used to change restaurants every month. You know?
Yeah.
Well, at one point, we were rotating around the restaurants.
Yeah, because I was the one scheduling them, that's why I know, I remember.
Well, yeah,
doing
we
that.
used to
So
hear-
Every month, yeah,
yeah.
3 different restaurants.
We used
So-
to hear a lot of, you know, moaning and groaning and all that stuff. Hey, what about us East Siders or West
Yep.
Side and this and that? Little Point, I remember that we used to get a lot of crowd from Ann Arbor, till one day they started their own Sun local users group,
Yeah.
Semi-Slug.
Yeah.
And in those days, Sun was the big, you know, thing, workstation, Unix and all, and it was popular in universities. So they formed their own group, and the traffic from there kind of, you know, became small.
They still exist, because I know that they're on one of my calendars.
Do they still?
Yeah, they're still around, but
Yeah,
Sun is,
Semi-Slug.
yeah, Sun is no
Southeastern
longer the focus.
Michigan- No. Southeastern.
There is a
They were
Linux
Washington.
user group called
No,
Semi-Slug.
there's 2 of them.
Okay,
There's,
Washtenaw, yeah.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
there's also Semi-Slug. I see both of
It's
them on my
hard to have
calendar.
a cool acronym with Oracle somehow in the middle of it. I don't know what they call it these days, but I don't think they talk about Unix or anything like that. They probably have more esoteric topics, you know, things like that.
But, you know, 27 years, and we're still going. And it's-
Yeah,
It's been pretty much uninterrupted for 27 years. It's pretty good. There aren't a lot of groups that have lasted that long. The Atlanta Linux user group's been around for an awful long time, but I think, you know, they're Linux.
A lot of them,
so
yeah,
they're
they're
all
Linux,
yeah.
but as Unix only, they're pretty much gone.
So they can't
I don't know
really
how
sell
many
it.
more years, if you keep
No,
going,
that's true.
then maybe you can get Michigan historical status or something, you know? Gotta find out from the governor's
Yeah,
office,
yeah.
hey, what do you have to do to qualify?
I can't believe
Right,
it's been 20
right.
years.
But you know, it's been a great group. I think.
Oh,
I've enjoyed
excellent,
being a part of it.
excellent. A lot of people have come and gone, and sometimes when, you know, I head out somewhere in the West Coast and they say, oh, you're from Michigan? Yeah, yeah. And then they bring out the story of someone they knew who went to the group and talked about it. So it's very interesting. Yeah, yes, seriously, it's
kind of fun. All right, well, we can
Yeah,
carry
sure.
on this conversation at dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
so,
thank you very much, Sharon. Rob?
just for you guys, if any of you are
Yeah.
down by the